Welcome to our June 2021 Salon. Our judge tonight is Michael Prokosh. He is retired after 37 years in chemical research for 3M. For the past 3 decades, Mike has been active in the photography community in the Twin Cities. He's been judging at clubs as well as regionally and internationally for the last 25 years and has taught judging classes for Minnesota Nature Photography Club. In addition, he's been active in the Photographic Society of America, both as a competitor, as a chairman, and as a judge of several international competitions. In 2002, he converted imaging on film to digital imaging. He has done digital photography in both the Arctic and Antarctic regions and quite a few regions between. Thank you so much for judging our salon, Mike.
You're welcome.
Our first category is assignment. I'll read the title of each image, starting with the sevens. We've got Blue Hour at the Pier.
The pier is very nice. It's a beautiful sky behind it. The things that held it back and kept it down was I think it was a little dark in the bottom areas, and you have an awful lot of room at the top that is not adding anything to the image. I myself would prefer to see this in a more panoramic format, bringing the top third or quarter of the image down and eliminating that, and then maybe just brightening the bottom a little to give it a little more brightness there so your eye isn't just concentrating on the sky. It would actually concentrate a little more on the boardwalk at that time. Next.
Okay, next we have Forgotten.
Again, here, I think we have a pretty good idea. We went into the cemetery and found these older gravestones and worked on them. The stones themselves are the strength of the image. We really want to look at that. And again, we have a lot of sky above them that's not really adding anything. I think we could have come down a little bit on the top and eliminated maybe down to that first large branch on the image, and that would have given us a little stronger view then of the stones and of the emphasis they should have in the image.
Okay, next is Gasparilla Inn.
I think they did a good job here on the exposure, and also the format I think works very well with this. I myself am drawn to the lamps on the very left edge of the image. They are the brightest thing in there, and you pull your eye over to that. We could have easily cropped those out without losing anything in the image. That first tree is not that necessary. You still would have had the edge of the building and things in there, and that would have given a little more emphasis to that corner of it and gotten away from the distraction of it. The lamps behind the golf carts are not near as strong and do not bother me quite as much. Again, it'd be nice to have a little more in the sky, but that's the kind of day you had, so you're really restricted with that. Next.
Mills Park 02.
Okay. This one was kind of two images to me. I thought the bridge in the center is the highlight, being the lightest thing in there and going across, and it's very strong in that. The zigzag patterns in the foreground, although interesting, seem to be fighting with the rest of the image. They tend to draw you into this maze of mechanics that are down there and drag you around, and you don't get into the image, which is really, I believe, the corner of the stone bridge and then the strength of the lit bridge in the background. So if we brought up the crop from the bottom to eliminate most of that zigzag, and that would have focused us more in the distance and in the the area of interest. Also, if I was doing this myself, I would have cropped out the construction crane in the upper right, I think it distracts from the rest of the image. Okay.
This is Pillsbury A Mill.
For those that are wondering, this is Annie. She just came out to visit. Okay. The A mill again, I think, is done well. It's got good lighting to it. It's kind of caught in the right hour. We do have some area in the bottom that's a little dark and really isn't giving us much information down there. We could have cropped a little of that off and cropped maybe a little of the top off. More so, the very bright, what I assume is a water tower in the middle, now is little out of focus, and because it's so bright, it tends to lose its sharpness. Uh, we either would need to change our exposure to take care of that, or come back a little earlier where there's more light on the rest of the image to help compensate for that very bright area. Next.
Okay, red rocks under blue hues.
Okay. I think this image is done very well in landscape mode here. And excuse me, I got to watch what the animal's doing. Okay. Um, and it's done very well. The clouds are very nice. Again, we have a little area at the top that really isn't adding much, but that's not a big thing. More so, I find it very unbalanced with all the brightness on the right side and the left side being kind of dull and featureless in comparison. I know you wanted to keep all that cloud in there to use that cloud as an emphasis, but still needs something in that large area to give it a little emphasis over there. Next.
Here is shoreline.
I kind of like this one. It drew me in when I looked at it initially, and because your requirements of how number of acceptances, I could only put so many at top. But I kind of did like it. I think the brightness brings you into the image, and then there are a few stars up there that kind of fill in some of those dead areas, so you do have that covered. The problem is more so that there's such a contrast difference between the bright area and the dark area. I think we have to make up our mind how much emphasis we want to give some of those areas that are in the dark right now, where I think a little shadow detail brought up on those would have made them a little more interesting. Next.
Sister Bay.
I really like the image. However, we do have a lot of dead space. Do we need quite that much in there? The top third of this image is not adding anything. The colors are all in the bottom and the sailboat in there to give it a little bit of emphasis. And I think we could have taken it to a panoramic and done it that way. Um, with that, I will say I do like the uh, detail of the sailboat being very small and giving it a sense of space and time. Next.
Snow geese at lowest bluffs.
This was one that I wasn't sure what to do with. The geese are very nice. It's a very nice shot of a behavioral at this area, but does it say blue hour? That's kind of where I got lost. I can't tell if it's really blue hour or it's just taken during the day and underexposed a little bit. Um, because of that, also that it just to me did not really fit the topic quite as well as some of the other images, and I marked it down a little bit for that. Next.
Okay, soccer under the lights.
Very nicely done image. The action is there. It is shot in the blue hour, but to me it really didn't fit the image of what I had for blue hour because it was done with artificial light, and therefore you could freeze the soccer ball, you could freeze her and get it all sharp, and yet it was still shot in semi darkness, if you want to look at it that way. Also, the very bright uh, field lights on both sides of the image could have been eliminated there. Um, Especially the one on the left is so strong, it just pulls you up to that and drags you away from the image in general. Next.
Touchy or Tucci. I probably said that wrong.
Uh, the image of the moon here is done quite well. Um, the areas around it do frame it a little bit, but I tend to question whether it has enough interest to hold you into it for an amount of time. Therefore, it did not quite stack up to some of the other images. If it were mine, I think I would try to crop in just a little bit more, make the moon a little bit bigger. Maybe that would be enough to carry it a little more. But right now, the major uh, image or major interest is quite a small portion of the image. Next.
Next is Wolf Moon.
I really wanted to move this one up, but I ran out of places to move it up to, which is unfortunate because afterwards one of the images was withdrawn, which was a acceptance, and this could have moved up at that stage. Um, However, I do like the solitude of it. I like the moon being very well placed compared to the church. The lights on the church are not bothersome. If anything, I might just crop it in a little bit on the right side and bring it in just a hair to try to move the church a little more off center. And right now, everything is pretty well centered on it. Next.
Moving on to the eights now, I will be reading the name of the photographer. Cherry and Spoon During the Blue Hour by Mick Richards.
Nicely composed. You got a beautiful set of clouds up there with the colors on those complementing the color of the cherry, so that worked out very well. I think everything falls together pretty well. It is difficult to judge this image in some ways because it is a common sight for us around here, but I think it was handled very well, and there's really not much I would change on it. Next.
Now we have McDonald Lake by Melissa Anderson.
Again, I think we have a very nicely done image. I think the mountain in the rear and its reflection work very well together, along with that little bit of shoreline to stop you from running out of the image on the right side. My question here is, it is so centered vertically that I want to give emphasis to something, and because of this, it's split totally between the two halves. I think if it were mine, I would crop up a little on the bottom. There's some stones away on the right edge there. I think I might crop up to about those. And that would give emphasis then to the mountains more and not draw you into the lake. Next.
St. Paul Cathedral by Diane Lefty.
A nice exposure, good area, sign, sky behind it. You pretty well filled the frame with what you want. It's just minor things held this one back. Um, I think the building on the very right lower corner, the car, and the lamppost do not fit with the rest of it. And if we cropped in just past that lamppost, you'd still have room between the cathedral and the edge of the frame, and it would take away those minor distractions that draw you away from the cathedral itself. Next.
On to the nines, we'll start with Skyline by Mike Schrun.
Great leading lines. The long exposure with the headlights and the tail lights really draw you into the image. The exposure on the buildings is all done well. Again, the lamppost is a little distracting, especially the one that's right in front of the building there. We could have toned those down or gone in and maybe overpainted them a little bit to get rid of some of the brightness in there. But I think it was very well done and everything is framed up nicely. Next.
And now our 10, Venice Pier by John Bach.
Uh, if you look at this compared to the previous one, here you have the nice strength of the pier and all the details there to show you something, and you have a sky that is doing something. It's got some clouds, it's got some colors that it,
Weird.
and it's done very well that way. The
Uh,
two
well,
people in the foreground give you some sense of scale and size, and also give you something of an interest down there in the foreground to fill that area that didn't have anything in it. Nicely done.
Moving on to the creative category, we'll start with the sevens. Our first image is barn negative.
Um, I think you picked a nice subject here. It's real well, and the I'm not sure if that's frost on the trees or if you played with something afterwards to do it, but it's very interesting. My feeling was it was very heavy on the right side and was closing in a little too close to that edge of the image with the main building there. Whether we could have taken a step or two to the right and changed our angle a little bit to help that out if there was something behind that was bothersome, uh, that was blocking you from going over there. And because of that, it just felt like everything was falling off the right side. And all I do is I end up looking at that very corner and not getting into the image. Next.
Next is fire dome.
Yeah. Um, Interesting image of the car. I mean, a very small portion of it. You got some trim panels and you've got some body lines and things. But to me, it almost became two images. You had the area with the fire dome with the bright colors and that. Then you had this green separating line, and you had this other lighter colors and greens and reds on the other side, which didn't seem to necessarily fit with the left side. I either want to see a little more of everything, which might tie it together, or concentrate just on the uh, left 2/3 of the image. Next.
Next we have flash dance.
Okay. This one I enjoyed the image. I think it's well done. It's a copy from the movie Flashdance. Very interesting that way, but it didn't yell creative to me. It yelled more general. And when I looked at it up close and the bigger monitor, I'm not really sure if anything had been done to it or not. And because of that, I left it as a seven. And I wasn't really sure how well it fit the category. Next.
Men in blue jeans.
Uh, for those people at Nature Club, they know my love of butt shots. So here we get another one. I think it was an interesting idea to highlight the blues in certain areas. However, I think in some ways we may have hurt ourselves doing that too, because the two cars in the upper or center right, if you want to look at that upper center right, the windows are blue, and they fight with the blues of the people. So therefore, you're jumping back and forth between the two, and also the road closed 1,000 foot sign. You tend to have anytime there's things with writing on it, you tend to have concentrate on those and not look at some of the other stuff. We could have cropped a little bit off the top and in from the right a little bit without changing the emphasis on the people and what the coloration was done there, and kept our mind or our eye more in that area. I think that a little bit of cropping would really improve it. Next.
Pelicans at rest.
Okay. This one's definitely been filtered in some way, and it's played with. Um, the pelicans themselves, are nicely perched, sitting there, almost duplicates of each other. And I think it's more on this is a question of how much interest there is in it and somewhat the balance. Um, I'm not really drawn into it. My eye doesn't uh, jump in there and really want to concentrate on things. And then that little bit of rock or concrete on the lower left isn't really adding anything. We probably could have cropped most of that lower area out. Next. Yeah. No title on this? Okay. Um,
The title of this is Tucum Carry number 3.
yeah. For some reason my chat came on here and get rid of that. Okay. I like the colors and the lines in this. I think it really works well, especially the oranges and blues kind of going together there. The cutout area, which is the strength of it, is almost overpowering to the rest of the image. So you start looking at that and not at the rest of it and trying to figure out what is happening there. And I think in some ways you either need to concentrate on that more or concentrate on the general patterns more. The two tend to be fighting with each other a little bit. And that was my only comments on this one. Next.
Sorry about that, everyone. This is white light.
Okay. Really impressive in some ways. I really like the image. The the fog, I assume, is what it is, and the bird with the fog in the background. But I think we've added a little too much light on the bird, and it becomes a little overpowering. Plus, when you look at it on a larger screen, there seems to be some highlighting along the edges and things of the bird's neck, especially on the left side, that tend to be a little disturbing. They just don't settle well with the eye. I really wanted to mark this one up, and I just couldn't get away from that little bit of brightness that was bothering me. Next.
On to the eights. We've got 2 eagles and 1 cougar.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out what the eagles and the cougar were. Some of us aren't real fast. I thought this was done nicely. The texturization that was done on it really works well with their skin tones and things and really helps give some emphasis to those. The background is handled nicely. The people are just enough out of focus, but yet you know what's going on. Really not much I would have marked it down on. There were just a couple I liked more than this, and that kept it down in the eights.
Okay, that image was by Mick Richards, by the way. Now moving on to the tens. We've got grooming reddish egret.
By
Sorry,
somebody.
Don
Don's back.
Beck. I'm
For
throwing off
some
my
reason,
rhythm here.
yeah. Um, I really like the painting job on this. The seaweed under the feet is really handled well. I thought the texture were just great. The little bit of changes in the bird work very well. We have a nice, strong image to start with, and then we added these textures and filters to it, and not anything I'd change in it, so I really liked it. Next.
Next is Ride Like the Wind by Betty Bryan.
I'm not sure what all they put together to get this, but it's a very impressive image. I really like the sky in the background back there, making it look almost like a sandstorm. Uh, the the lighting on the horse and the girl is very good. There's a very intense look on the woman's face, and then there's just enough painting in the foreground on the weeds and stuff to give it a little bit of an unnatural texture, but it works with this image very well as a creative. So I thought that was very nice. Next.
All right, moving on to the nature category now. We'll start with the sevens, starting with Aspen.
I think the idea here was real good. You know, the strong tree trunk going up and the couple fungi or whatever they are on it are quite impressive. What happened though with the bright sky we have, it really overpowers the aspen a lot and draws your eye to it. And we left so much of that around that that is the predominant part of the image. We could have easily cropped in from the left and from the top um, to more emphasize that tree trunk. And I don't know what the camera settings were in this. We could have possibly lived with a little more depth of field that would have got a little more strength, because here the bottom fungi is fairly strong. The next one up's getting pretty soft, and past that it gets real soft. Well, we just needed to work on a few things there. Next.
Next is hepatica.
Beautiful set of flowers. Hepaticas are always very nice, and this one, I think they found a good section of them to do, but they need to do a little more work taking the image. The lighting is very strong, and that really doesn't work for these flowers very well. I think if we'd used a diffuser to soften the light on these, and possibly even a reflector from the uh, right side then to kick some light back into it, would have helped a lot. I'm not sure if they polarize it, but if they have not, it should have been polarized to get rid of that shiny glare from the leaves that are there. Uh, Botany is probably one of the toughest things to do, and everybody thinks it's the easy place to start. But it takes a lot of technique to make these things really work. Next.
I must ask you a question.
Cute title, cute picture. I really think it's got a lot of emphasis to the mustache and the horse, but it almost too crowded. I think we got that minor gap between the left edge and the nose. It'd be like seeing a little bit more room there, and maybe a little bit more room on the top. It just feels like we're pushing everything into a box and forcing our way in. Next.
Cascade flower.
This one I really got a little picky on. The flowers themselves are pretty nice. Pasque flowers are very delicate. They're very easy to do. It looks like it's been gardened a lot, and in some ways that bothered me. There should be some junk around it, but more so if you look just about even with the bottom half of the blue flower on the right edge, there's some textures over there that are very weird, and I can't figure out what would cause them, but they draw my eye away. Again, I think we're a little tighter than we need to be. We could have given it a little more room on the right, and given that flower just a little more room to breathe over there. Next.
Sharing secrets.
Great nature story. The interaction here between the adult and the chick is very nice. Um, when I worked through it the first time, I almost didn't see the chick. It's even though it's the strength of the image, it is not jumping out at you that much. The lines of the weeds and things all around it aren't hurting it, but they're not helping it either. More so, I think we really needed the head of the adult a little bit more forward or a little more to the side. We pick up at least one of the eyes a little bit. Here you got that eyeless head, and it kind of loses the strength of that bird. Next.
Shooting stars.
Oh, another botany. Botanies are always tough. And I think he did a very nice job here. Um, However, you've got an awful lot of the image out of focus. The buds below it and alongside it are all falling away. The three buds are reasonably good, especially the two left ones, or sorry, the two right ones. The left one's starting to get a little softer than I might like. I think you either would have to do something like an HDR on this or crank your apertures out to 16 or 32 or something like that. And then you're probably going to be fighting the background if you do that. So it's a real kill trying to get it correct all the way through. Next.
Silhouette.
Beautiful sky. You got the two center trees with a lot of light coming through them against that sky, which is very nice. But then we got so heavy on the right side and so heavy on the bottom. Um, do we need all that black? So if we brought the right in, almost to where that first isolated tree is, and bring the bottom up a little bit, it would give us some light in the image and a little more to work with, instead of losing so much of the eye into those black areas looking for details that just aren't there. Next.
Smoky Mountain Rapids.
Nice rapid, and you captured it pretty well. You got nice timing on it. Um, the the softness of it is very nice. Then you have this area around it. I think here was just picking your spot to take the image where we could have not had that little branch sticking in on the lower right. We could have played around with some other things to give it some strength. Um, most people won't do it, but those branches are usually quite bendable, and you can always pull them over and hold them down with a rock or something until the picture's done, and then take them back up to keep them out of your image. I do like the waterfall in general. I do like the little bit of flower there in the medium left area. I just think we need to concentrate a little more on those fine details. Next.
Okay, Tangled Path Flower.
Uh, this one, I much different view of a past flower. This one looks like it's well past being its prime. It's got all the garbage in that wasn't in the last one, so here we didn't garden, and I think that really adds to it. But because of the past flower being held down by that garbage, it loses its 3D and becomes a 2D image. And I find that does not work. I'd like to see a little more depth and maybe some side lighting to get some details into all those little areas. Next.
What is she doing down there?
Good title. And good, good capture of the bird. You got a nice strong eye there, and it's a little, might be borderline soft, but it's not bad at all that way. But all these things in front of it are pretty sharp. We might have our focus a little bit forward on this and soften up the bird just a little bit. Also, do we need all this area above it? Normally in a bird, you want some area above because they tend to take off in that area, so that's where the movement's going to be. But here we have an awful lot of featureless blue sky that's not adding to the image. So I think if you crop that down a little, it'd bring a little more emphasis to the bird, and you still have all that nice area down below with all the detail in it to work with. Next.
Okay, we're moving on to the eights now, and we will start with Mother and Her Goslings by John Bach.
Very nice capture. The bird itself is caught real well. It's got detail all the way through. The goslings are all have their heads towards you, which is really nice because you're not getting that back of the head game or anything. So in general, it's done real nice. We probably could have put a little light into the face of the gosling on the far right because that one's starting to get a little dark in there. And more so, I think it's the weed line and the bubbles or foam or whatever it is along that with the bright spots, those highlights are tending to draw you up into that area more. But I think it's a great capture, and I gave it an 8. Next.
Okay, we have Short-Eared Owl in Flight by Diane Herman.
I really like the image. It's very good use of dead space in this. It's almost painterly when you look at it because of the colors that are involved. The owl looking at you is very good. I'm not quite sure when on my screen how sharp the face of the owl is, but it's good enough to get by on. More so, I think I take a little bit of the sky out of the top. Um, there's a lot of area above that, I guess, be the second dark line there. That's really not adding a whole lot to it, but it's very nicely done. And a wonderful capture to get this. Next.
There's Only Room for One of Us by Melissa Anderson.
Yeah. Very nice capture again. The birds are, especially the bird on the right, is got beautiful wingspan on it. It's got good detail in the face and works well. The cardinal is in nice landing position. You just got a little bit unlucky that one of the feathers is covering the beak, kind of in a semi-vertical area, and is a little distracting. But in general, there's really a nice area or feeling to the bird coming in. Lighting's very good and everything works. Next.
We have the nines now. Hooded Merganser with Fog by John Specht.
Uh, it tells a story. I mean, not something we normally see. The merganser's having a meal here. The water is handled very well. The bird pretty much fills most of the frame, and we've got a landscape type area here, that format that looks very nice in the panoramic. So nothing I would change on this one. Next.
Trumpeter Swans Mating by Larry Weinman.
Caught the moment that it had to be done to get a good image. You got the water fly, you got him pecking at the feathers there. Both birds' eyes are very sharp and very nicely done. Uh, I don't know what you would want to do better, other than it be nice to get a little lightening of the feathers on the bottom of the rear wing. There's a lot of detail there that we're losing at that stage. Next.
Yellow-Headed Blackbird by Diane Herman.
Wonderfully done. I mean, I really like this one. It's a lot of people would consider it imbalanced because it's quite a ways to the left side of the image, where normally you'd expect it farther to the right. But I did not find that to be bothersome myself. The background's handled real well, and the bird is done beautifully. Next.
Okay, the pictorial category. We start with the sevens, Capital.
The capital itself is done pretty well. It might be a little on the dark side. The clouds behind it are very nice, but all the little lights in the foreground just tend to be drawing you away. We could have cropped up a ways from the bottom and got rid of some of them, but then you still have that fairly strong line of lights right in front of the Capitol itself, and they're a little distracting. I guess the question would be, uh, did I pick the right time? If I'd come a half hour earlier, they may not have been as bothersome because there was enough light on the rest of the image to cover some of that up, so it wasn't the bright spots on a black background. Well done otherwise. Next.
Creek.
Okay. Got a good leading line back up the creek there with all the little rocks and things going on. Um, the the water flow is done nicely. It's timed out well. It just seems like it's lacking a little contrast. The areas around it are really light colored and are probably drawing you away from it. And the yellow buds don't seem to have the intensity that they should. So either a little bit of white balance change or a little bit of contrast may help this a lot. Next. I love the
Next is
leading line of the tree going
WWPC
into
at
the
Eagle
cloud.
Beach.
I love the leading line of the tree going right and leading you up to the cloud there. I think it works very well. Uh, the clouds themselves work very well together. The question is the uh, 20% or so of the right edge of the image adding anything to it? You got some garbage right down in the corner, which draws my eye down to that. It concentrates down in that area. And the sailboat out there, I think does add a little bit to the image. So it does fall together pretty well. I think we just need to play with it a little bit, maybe play some cropping differences both on the right and left to see what works and what feels good to you. Next.
Next, we have end of trail.
Um, I think we had a good idea here of the colors of the stones versus the starkness of the wood and the water behind giving it some textures. That branch falling behind back there really kind of screwed up the whole image. It doesn't fit in with the rest of the things that are there. If we could have, in some ways, walked over and removed that if we could, or found a angle change where that would be less bothersome. And also the large boulder in the lower right kind of hurts us in the texture a little bit. So again, if we either could have raised or got in a little closer, which would have eliminated that, then and still kept the textures of everything, or changed the angle of the camera a little to eliminate that boulder, I think we would have been better off. Next.
Golden fronted woodpecker.
I'm trying to figure out why I gave this a 7. Well, you get old sometimes and forget what you're doing. Oh, that happens. But the wings are beautiful. You know, it's done nicely. It's coming off this branch. I think the head is a little soft. You know, sometimes it's hard with my laptop here to tell what I saw on the big monitor, and I think that's probably what the complaint was. I do like the positioning of the bird. I like it's got room to move in. I think it might just be a little bit of head movement in it that's causing it to look a little blurred. Next.
Golden hour.
Okay. Um, I think we have a nice landscape here that has some real possibilities. You got those rocks with all the textures to them. You got a beautiful sky in behind, and you have these wheat. I'll call them weeds, whatever they happen to be. And it's nice coloring to them. But I think we try to do too much with that color and with the textures of the weeds, and we covered up everything else. If we'd taken a little different view of it, or maybe a step back a step or two and use a different lens, we could have increased. Whoop. My power came off here for a second. I think we could have made a better image and used more of those other textures to help compensate for the textures of the weeds. Next.
Outbuilding.
Interesting little building. I mean, interesting tech. You know, I think the image itself has got some possibilities. It's got the vertical of the trees with the building in the center. Um, is there enough there to keep my interest? Would be the question I have. Once I've looked at the building, I kind of quit looking at it, and I want to see something else going in those areas. Are behind it are so black, we have no detail in those due to the lighting and that was available at the time. I might try this at different times and see what they look like. Next.
Raging river.
Okay. You got nice leading lines to the river and draws you back in up the hill there. Um, you know, as we always kind of kid, it'd be nice to have a moose back in the river, but that didn't happen. But I'm not real excited by the way the water was handled. I guess I either want a shorter shutter time or a longer shutter time. We're kind of in between here, and we're half milky and half not milky, and it just doesn't feel comfortable. The other thing is we have that little batch of leaves in the lower right, which are really distracting from the rest of the image. I think if you'd eliminated those, it would have helped you a lot. Next.
Red bellied woodpecker.
It's an interesting capture. Bird feeder and bird work out very well. However, in this situation, I think you either need to concentrate more on the bird because it's a non-nature shot. So the story you're telling is a little different. I think if we brought it in a little more, so the um, angles of the roof just touch the edge, I wouldn't leave much of the chain in, if any, because that coloring on that is a little rough. And then the bright, I don't know if it's a road or whatever behind back there, but the bright horizontal area just at the bottom of the feeder tends not to fit with the rest of the image. So I think we just need to bring that in a little bit stronger as far as bringing out more of the detail. Next.
Okay, we're on to the eights now, and we'll start with A Light Snack by Fred Sabatka.
Great capture, and I really like the image. It's done very well. The tongue out, the fire flames, but in some ways it's fighting with itself because you have flames on both sides and you tend to jump back and forth between them. And I think I would have concentrated on taking this more to a square format, eliminating the flames on the right and maybe up to about the elbow of that arm, which then would let you focus on the face and the expression and the flames on the left side, which is the strength of the image. Next.
Ready, Set, No Go by Marianne Jerks.
Wonderful capture. I don't know where he got this, but it looks very nice. It's a little unlucky. The one owlet up on top has its head turned away from us. So if that turned back toward us, I think it would have been a really strong image. Um, and I think that was the real problem. I go up there looking at that outlet, looking for detail, and of course these guys are little fuzzy things, and the sharpness isn't what you'd like it to be because that's what they look like. Not much you can do about it. So I think it was just a luck of a draw on this that you didn't quite get everything you wanted out of it. Next.
Stromness Harbor by Marianne Sear.
Well, I think it's well done. I really liked it. Um, the clouds in the background and the harbor itself with the buildings down there are very nicely done. The difficulty for me was this little line of snow in the lower right. And to me, that is just too strong in the foreground of that image and has really no interest to me. So therefore, I look at that white and it kind of draws me down there. A little bit of cropping or a little bit of toning on that probably would have helped a fair amount. Um, Good sky, good view. Just play with that cropping a little bit or play with the toning on that. Next.
On to the scores of 9. Sunset by Mike Trun.
Beautiful sunset. I think you did a really good job on picking a foreground area here. It emphasizes it very well. The details all the way through are very good. Not really much I'd change. I just liked a couple of things a little better than this. Next.
And now our 10, Wabasha Bridge by J. Olson Goody.
I just love the graphics detail of this, the contrast between the roadway and bridge and the ice pack beneath it is just a wonderful combination. It's something we don't see. You don't think about this normally. And, it's one of those things that you could put up in your wall and stare at it all day and probably be perfectly happy with it. Next.
That's it for tonight. This is our June Salon. Thank you, Michael, for being our judge with your thoughtful comments. And thank you to everyone for participating.
Thank you all.